This Sunday, we launched a new sermon series at Aldersgate titled Walk This Way. What we're doing during this season of Lent is we're looking through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and we're seeing Jesus' example in several different areas, things that he taught us, and the things that we want to follow after him in. The first one of those things is love. Jesus taught us love. In fact, John tells us later in 1 John 3:18 that God is love, that Jesus is love. And we certainly want to model this example. So what I want to do today as we take the next step is actually leave the Gospels and go to another place in the New Testament where Paul actually talked to us about love. You're probably familiar with this chapter. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's commonly known as the love chapter. You hear it read a lot at weddings or different places like that. But Paul gives us this beautiful illustration of love. And here's what he tells us about love. He says all of these gifts, and this is what Paul's talking about in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, is all of the spiritual gifts. We can have any spiritual gift. We can have a lot of spiritual gifts, but none of them measure up to the gift of love. And he actually talks to us a little bit about what love is. Now, as I said in the message, I said love can be defined this way. It's a choice that requires action. So it's a choice. It's not a feeling. We don't have to feel like we're going to love someone, but we choose to love someone. And it requires action. Love is expressed through the things that we say and the things that we do. That's how Jesus modeled love to us. It was a choice. He gave up his life, the action, to die for you and I. And so Paul talks about that here in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. In verse 4, he says this: love, this choice that requires action, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. I heard it said one time that if we want to know if we're actually putting our love into action, if we're making a choice to put our love into action, that we could put our name into every place the word love shows up in these few verses. So it would read like this for me: Ryan is patient and kind. If love is a choice that requires action, then I have to ask myself, am I making the choice to be patient and kind? In this situation with this person, am I making the choice to be patient and kind? Am I making the choice to not envy or boast? Am I making the choice to not be arrogant or rude? And you can continue to go all through these scripture verses that Paul gives us here. But if you want to walk this way, if you want to grow in love as Jesus modeled for us, then I encourage you to spend some time on these verses, to meditate on these verses, to grow in these verses, and ask yourself in every way, am I this person? Am I making this choice and following up on this action? Am I love as God is love? So I want you to spend some time in your group this time, and I want you to talk about where you see this in your life and where you struggle in these places in your life, and where you're going to make the choice and follow it up with the action as we walk this way.